welcome everyone. Welcome back to another episode. Today I have with me, what do I say now? There's so many things I could say about Nurse Sarah, uh, podcaster, published author, speaker, renowned speaker, and also the resume writer. Trust me, it has been a long time I wanted to get you over here, and I'm so happy that you are here with us today. Welcome to our platform. Welcome to Empowered RN. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm really excited for this conversation. Always happy to share my knowledge where I can and inspire and educate other nurses to make some positive changes in their lives.
Yes, and you were a LinkedIn top voice also.
I don't think I ever got that title, but that is still something I'm striving for.
Okay, well, let's speak it into being. Yeah, so you can be found on every platform that I think I am on. I think that you're one of the the biggest platforms that I literally see on, and you're doing quite well is LinkedIn. And I love what you're doing in terms of the RN resume. And I think that's an era right now where many of us as nurses are literally like struggling in, and it's good to see that we have persons who are now expert in the field. But before I go any further, I want you just to give us like a backtrack of who you are and what do you do.
Okay, so thanks everyone for listening. My name is Sarah. I'm an RN. I have been a nurse almost 20 years now. I have had lots of jobs at the bedside, non bedside, leadership, remote, you name it. Now I am an entrepreneur helping other nurses make that same journey. And I think that there are so many paths for us in nursing. It's almost like there are too many choices. And I think this is the thing that paralyzes a lot of nurses is just not knowing what options are available and feeling not feeling confident enough to apply and go for those positions. So that is me in a nutshell. I've got lots of things on the go, just like you do, and I think there
Yes.
is a lot of opportunity for nurses. So definitely, I'm definitely someone who is very passionate about nursing and helping others always.
All right. So before we go any further, I am live as Empowered and also on YouTube, and also we're on TikTok. So for those who are on TikTok, you can come over to Empowered and YouTube channel, and you can also tune in as we're talking about resume writing for nurses. So we have one of our experts here. She is the RN resume, and she does really well in that area. I know you gave a backtrack about yourself, but I remember that when we were speaking earlier, you actually spoke that your mom was a nurse also. Did you
Mhm.
think that your pathway was influenced by your mom?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, my mom was an RN as well. She didn't really work as a nurse though. So this is a thing, right? So she got her RN. She worked for a little bit on a med surge unit, but it was the 3 to 11 p.m. shift, which she didn't like because, things happen after 3 p.m. You kind of miss out on everything. And then she moved from the US to Canada, actually. That's where I'm from. And at
Mm.
the time, there were not a lot of jobs for nurses, and she kind of went into a different industry altogether. So she went into finance, but she always had this kind of regret that she didn't do what she wanted to do in nursing. And so when it came time for me to choose a career, she actually told me not to go into nursing.
Mm.
Yeah, she told me not to. She said, "It's hard work. I don't know if this is the right move for you." I got burnt out. And I said, "You know what? No, I'm going to do this because I want to help people."
Yeah.
And so I kind of did the opposite of what she told me. And it's funny because as my career went along, she kept saying, "Oh, you are so lucky. All these opportunities are here now." And I think that for anyone listening, it's not really just about luck, right? It's what you put into it. So it's looking for these opportunities, making
Right.
connections, it's taking a step out of the box, out of your comfort zone. So there are always going to be opportunities for people that go for them. And so I think there are, back in her day, I think there were a lot fewer opportunities, but it's not really just about luck. It's a little bit of luck, but it's a lot of strategy and it's a lot of skill too.
Yeah. So before we go into some questions that I have for you, do you think that one of the biggest area that nurses are struggling in would be like resume writing?
Oh, yeah, I think so. Because I don't know about you, but anyone listening, I would love to know if anyone ever got help with writing resumes in nursing school.
No.
Yeah, because I never did. And, as my career went along, I had a lot of stumbles. It took me a long time to get my first non bedside job. It took even longer to get my first leadership job. And I just kept thinking, if I apply with the same resume, people will know how hard I work and what a great job I do. And the
Mhm.
truth is, if you're applying outside of your unit, outside of your organization, nobody knows you, right? So
Yeah.
nobody's going to know all the great things you do unless you tell them what it is that you do. And in nursing school, I think I had this one template that I just used and I just kept updating for years and years until I realized there was a way to write resumes. And the thing about resume writing is, yeah, it can be really dry. Like, it's not fun. I love writing resumes, but I know most nurses don't. So the thing is, in this day and age, you only have about 7 seconds to get your point across before
Yeah.
a hiring manager decides if they're going to keep reading or not. So it's like if you're on TikTok or you're looking at YouTube shorts or you're looking at Instagram reels, right? Like, our attention spans are really short now, and you have to catch people right
Mhm.
at the top of the resume. Tell them what your best qualifications are, or tell them what your transferable skills are for a job that maybe you haven't done before. So no, I don't think nurses are great at writing resumes. I certainly wasn't. I learned a lot through trial and error, and then through helping a lot of nurses get the jobs they want. I have really kept myself up to date with what people are looking for in resume writing. So I think it's both an art and a science.
Right. So for those on TikTok, remember we're here live with an RN resume, and this is Nurse Sarah, a resume expert helping us with our resume writing. And I like what you said. So please come over if you're on TikTok over to YouTube to join in this discussion. Remember, if you're watching, to like so that we can have more persons tuning in. I like what you said that when you're writing a resume, it takes like a couple seconds for you to catch the eyes of whoever it's the recruiter or whoever is looking for that job in terms of getting those skills there. But one question I like to jump in is that what should every nurse have on their resume?
That is a really great question because there's so much background, so many different types of skills and experience. So I think as a minimum, right
Mhm.
after your name, you need to have your degrees and your designations. So a lot of times I see nurses list that, maybe halfway down the page. So for example, my name, so Sarah Fung, comma BSN, comma
Mhm.
RN. I also have a master's, which I would probably put in there too. So right at the top, you want people to see if you have special certifications, if all your degrees, all your designations, that needs to go right front and center. The other thing is, I think that every nurse needs to get
One
on
second.
LinkedIn. Oh, sorry.
So you said so when you write your title, when you write your name,
Mhm.
all your certification should be behind your name on your resume at the top.
I think the most important ones.
The
So
most important.
a
Okay.
lot of people have a ton of certifications or a lot of degrees, but
Mhm.
if you, at a minimum, you should have your highest degree. So whether
Mhm.
that's a BSN or an MSN or a FNP or something, and then your designation, right? So are you an NP? Are you an RN? Are you an LPN? Have that. And then
Mhm.
if you have any special certifications, for example, if you're a certified emergency nurse, right? CEN could be there, or public health nurse, PHN. Or let's say you've done something like you've gotten a project management certification, that can go right after your name as well.
Okay.
Because, like, you can see how quick it is to read someone's name and their designation. It takes half a second. But if
Right.
someone has to do the mental work of scanning your resume, looking into your education section, looking at the certifications, like, you should have it there as well, but it
Mhm.
definitely needs to be top and center, right at the top of your resume, either next to your name or the line right under your name.
Okay.
And then I also think it's really important in this day and age. You might be hearing, oh, you need to tailor your resume, you need to make it unique to every job you apply to. So every resume should have what I call a profile summary section. So right after your name and your contact information, a profile summary. And this
Mhm.
is where you can really tailor the top skills you have to the job you're applying to. So let's say you're applying to a med surge job, let's say. So you might
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about that you're skilled in wound care, in IV starts, in medication administration, patient education. Or if you're applying for a remote work from home job, you might want to talk about the different EMR systems you've used, the fact that you know how to use Microsoft Office, or you can get on a video call. Or maybe you have a compact license. That's really helpful for work from home jobs. So you're listing kind of at a snapshot, like what are your top qualifications and why should this person keep reading your resume?
Okay.
Yeah. And then if I can name just a couple other things, I think
Mm-hmm.
it's really important to have what I call a skills summary section. So
Mm-hmm.
if you've only worked bedside, let's say, and you've done a lot of bedside jobs, I'm sure in a lot of these jobs you're doing the same type of thing, right? Like you're documenting, you're doing patient education, you're doing conflict resolution, wound care, catheters. So rather than listing that 10 different times, you might want to have a summary of the skills that you've developed over time so that you can actually save space and then leave the space for more important things, like maybe you were a charge nurse or you were a preceptor, or maybe even talking about the patient load, like how many patients you had per shift or how many beds are on the unit. So that's super helpful information rather than kind of saying, provided care according to care plan. Like I see that kind of general stuff a lot. So you want to make yourself stand out a little bit more with a skills summary section.
Okay. All right. And we talk, I think we can list this too. Like, I know you're listing out everything that a nurse should have on the resume, but how long should that resume be?
Oh, that is a good question. I get this question a lot. So I will say there's no hard and fast rule, but in 90 to 95% of cases, you should aim
Mm-hmm.
for 2 pages.
Two
And
pages.
yeah, and I do hear from a lot of nurses that they get this advice it should only be 1 page, right? And you might have
Mm-hmm.
heard that before. But
Yeah.
there's only so much you can fit on 1 page. And when we're talking about things like applicant tracking systems, they're
Yes.
essentially scanning your resume to see how closely you match the job posting. And
Mm-hmm.
if you think about how short 1 page is, it's kind of hard to do that when you
Mm-hmm.
only have 1 page. So I would say very rarely, if you're a brand new grad and you've not worked anywhere before and you didn't have a lot of clinical placements, it could maybe be 1 page. Or if you've been a nurse for a long time and you're going for a senior leadership type position, I have done resumes that are 3 pages.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, aiming for 2 pages is a really good first step.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I said, it doesn't have to be. If you're over by a few lines, that's okay. If as long as every line earns its place and it needs to be there, that's what I would
Right.
say.
And I
Hmm.
think it's very important when you say 2 pages. I don't know about other persons, but when you look on these job boards sometimes and you look at how many persons had applied, you will see 100 persons applying. So now
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand why you're saying like 2 pages the most, because if you have 4 pages and you have 100 applications to go through, sometimes some things may get missed.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I love what we're talking about, and I like to go further. I know you listed to put your skills, very important, and also, making sure your certifications are listed at where your name is. But one thing that we like to go into is that of our experience. A lot of nurses work different specialties, they probably have more experience. Should
Hmm.
nurses always include all the experiences that they have in their resume?
So I think it depends on what kind of job you're going for. So when you're thinking about like what should you do with your resume when it comes to anything, right? It's always about what kind of job are you applying for? What does the job description say? So if
Mm-hmm.
you are applying to a job that requires you to have a diverse background of specialties, I would absolutely list them. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going from, let's say, a bedside job to a remote nursing job, is that something they're asking for? And do you need to include every single job you've ever had? The answer is you don't have to. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the thing that trips up a lot of nurses is if you've been working more than 10 years, I would say you don't have to list every single job you've ever had. And
Mm-hmm.
that is a really great way to cut down on some of that length of the resume. So I would say go back maybe 10 years. And then I know what everyone's thinking, like, well, what about the jobs I've had earlier in my career? So you don't
Yeah.
have to necessarily remove them, but what you could have is a other work experience section and just simply list the areas you've worked, so
Mm-hmm.
that we're not going back, 30 years, because I've seen that before. It's definitely not necessary unless there was a job way back that is exactly the job you want to get now. Even then, you can kind of list it, again, maybe even in the summary section, is that you previously worked as a nurse in X unit for whatever amount of time it was. So
Mhm.
again, we're going for like that kind of minimalist thing. If you think about, decluttering your house, right? You only want to keep what's relevant and what's necessary. And that's how you got to think about a resume. So I see this a lot from nurses where we think more is better, right? Like, I'm
Right.
just going to keep adding more. People will see how great I am. But in reality, there's so much there sometimes that it's hard for people to pick out what is really important. So
Yeah.
thinking about like how every single line on your resume needs to earn its place. Is there a way to write something a little bit more concisely? Is there a way to format it to where it's maybe not taking up so much space? So there's lots of different skills, and that's why I say it's both an art and a science. Like, you got to have the actual content, right? But you also have to have it in a way that's easy for a human person to read, and not
Mhm.
make the font so small that no one can see it, or not have so many kind of fancy tables and borders that it's hard to figure out where you're going, where you're looking.
I like what you touched on in just keeping what is relevant. And I know that you mentioned transferable skills, and as nurses, some our field is so diverse that you can transfer into any other areas. What
Hmm.
if you're transferring over like into a different area such as corporate world? Do you think those skills will be relevant because you want to list everything, to show that you're for the job?
Yeah.
How would you go about doing that?
So I think this is where you really got to be creative, right? So a lot of nurses think if I just tell them the job I had, like the job title, then they'll
Hmm.
understand what it means. And that's not necessarily true, because if you go outside of bedside or even outside of healthcare, people have this idea of what nurses do and they're not accurate. So people get their ideas of what nurses do from shows like Nurse Jackie, Nurse Ratchet, right? Like Grey's Anatomy. Like, these are all inaccurate stereotypes. So if you're a nurse, let's say, and you're transferring, you want to go into the corporate world, maybe you can talk about things like conflict resolution, because we do that every single day, whether it be difficult patients or difficult families or even difficult coworkers. Communication is a really big skill that a lot of nurses forget sometimes. So both written and verbal communication is something we're really, really great at. Also, working under pressure, we're literally saving lives. Lives are on the line. We're giving, really high risk medications. Multitasking, that's something we're really great at, working under pressure. Um, there's a lot of things going on. And I think sometimes we overlook a lot of this, right? Even the fact is, if you've ever worked as a charge nurse or a preceptor, then you are in a leadership role, even if it's not a
Mhm.
formal leadership role. Like, you are leading other people. And that's something that's really needed in the corporate world. Um, Adaptability, right? You don't even know what you're walking into. You
Right.
could think that you have the most stable patient in the world, and then they're crashing. So we
Mhm.
are really adaptable and resourceful. One other thing I want to mention is, as nurses, we're always working with broken equipment or equipment that's breaking. And how many times have we had to like tape something up and hope it gets through the shift? And so we're really good at being resourceful, right? With
Yes.
a limited resource environment. So like, all these things save money. And in the corporate world, that's a lot of the time looking for, are you able to work with a budget? Are you able to work with a timeline? And these
Mhm.
are ways that you can be creative with how you describe what you do in each job, because
Mhm.
like, there's a million different ways to explain what it is you do. And again, going back to the job that you want or you're going for, that's kind of how you have to come at it from that angle.
Right. All right. So thank you so much for that. To all those who are new here, thank you guys for joining. And we're talking about resume writing for nurses. If you're on TikTok, come over on YouTube where you can see Nurse Sarah live and direct, or expert that is here with us. So come over on to Empowered RN. So another question that I'd like to ask is with regards to our graduate nurses. Many times they sometimes struggle in getting jobs. How can graduate nurses have a strong resume?
So I think something that often gets overlooked is how important your clinical placements are in nursing school. So a
Mhm.
lot of nurses will think, well, I've never worked anywhere as a nurse, and they list the jobs they had prior to nursing. And if
Mhm.
these jobs aren't really related to healthcare, then it's not really doing very much, I would say. So I've seen nurses list jobs working in fast food or working in retail. And I'm like, where's what you did as a med surge student nurse, and they didn't list it, right? So
Mhm.
it's really important to list every clinical placement you had. If you know the number of hours you worked on each unit, that's super helpful. Your start and end dates. If you're really lacking, maybe even just a bullet point or two underneath each placement as to what it is you did. Even if you didn't do very much, even if you just observed, right? That's still important. These are still really important skills. If you had certain courses you took in nursing that are going to be impactful, list those as well. If you're a brand new grad and you had a really good grade point average or you got on the honor list, make sure you include that as well.
Mhm.
If you joined any committees or if you volunteered throughout school, that's also going to be really important. So
Mhm.
don't think you don't have any skills. You're just at the beginning. We all started somewhere. And
Mhm.
if you're able to network a little bit, that would be really important too. So whether it be, applying online and then showing up in person and just letting that person know you applied, and just, even bringing a hard copy resume after you've applied online, that would be really good. Or even using a platform like LinkedIn to find the
Mhm.
hiring manager or the recruiter and letting them know, just sending them a DM that you applied. That is going to make
Yeah.
a huge difference. 99% of people will not be doing this. And I always say, be the 1%. Be the people that are going to take that extra step, because it doesn't require any special skill. It just
Mhm.
requires a little bit of courage and a little bit of strategy.
Okay. All right. I want to come back to you on that. We have a question from RN to CEO saying, this is a good question. If a degree is not completed and you're in the process, how do you mention that on the resume?
That is a great question. So, if you have at least started the degree, it's worth mentioning. So, for example, let's say you're doing a nurse practitioner, like an FNP program, then you could write, FNP, and then in brackets, you could put in progress. So they know
Mhm.
you've started. And if you know when you're going to graduate, you can say expected, I don't know, June 2026.
You're right.
So, right? So you've told them you've started and you've told them exactly when you expect to finish. Because
Mhm.
if you're close to completion and let's say the job you're applying for requires it, then that might give you a better chance, right? Rather than not including it at all or not
Mhm.
including the end date, because at this point they don't know if you've just started or if you're
Mhm.
almost done or you're somewhere in between. So,
Yeah.
along that line, though, I would say that if you started a degree and you did not complete it, let's say you had to drop out for whatever reason, I would not include that, because it doesn't really do anything, right? So if you say you did the first 2 years of, I don't know, a master's program, then that kind of leaves a seed of doubt in people's mind, like, why didn't you finish? Are you going back?
Mhm.
What happened? So if you are in progress and you reasonably expect to finish, then I would include it. If you dropped out for a reason or you changed your major, I probably wouldn't include that kind of stuff.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
So hope that answers your question, Arin, to see you. If you have any more questions, guys, you can post them in the chat and we'll read them. I like what you said though. When you're applying to a particular facility organization, you can go onto LinkedIn. And I want to just segue a bit. I don't know if many of us understand like the importance, especially as nurses, as
Mhm.
LinkedIn. A lot of
Mhm.
persons are on TikTok, Instagram, other social media apps, right? They're good. But I think one of the biggest and most important apps that a nurse should be on, any professional, would be LinkedIn. What is your take on that and why?
I have made a video and it's literally called LinkedIn, the number one thing you can do for your career.
Mm,
So I think things like TikTok and YouTube are super fun, like they're entertaining, and I am on them as well. LinkedIn is social media for professional purposes.
mm,
So I have found jobs myself on LinkedIn. I've connected with people on LinkedIn. I'll just let you know that I have a healthcare recruiter on my team who spends 70%, like 70% of his time sourcing candidates on LinkedIn. So what that means is if he puts up a job posting and he doesn't get enough people applying, or the people applying didn't have the experience he was looking for, he's
mm.
spending 70% of his time literally looking through
On
profiles,
LinkedIn.
trying to find people that have the skill set he's looking for. So if you're not on LinkedIn, I feel like you're kind of missing out, right? Like, it's 2026. We need to be on LinkedIn. It's not too hard to learn. If you're
Mm,
already on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, you can figure out LinkedIn.
yes.
If you can't, I'm definitely here to help. I help nurses with LinkedIn profiles all the time. I think it's a really great place to be. And just think about it. If you have your profile set up correctly, what if someone approached you for a change about a job you didn't even know about? Instead of you
Mhm.
having to go to every single job and apply one by one, it's so time consuming. So this is a way for something to work for you while you sleep. Literally, it will work for you while you sleep.
While you sleep.
Right? While you sleep. So that's the goal, because we nurses definitely need more sleep.
Mhm.
So if something can make your life easier and it's not going to be rocket science to learn, I don't know why you wouldn't do it. Another thing that the healthcare recruiter told me on my team is that if two people of equal experience apply to a job, and one person has a LinkedIn profile and the other one doesn't, he would prefer to interview the one who has a LinkedIn profile,
Mm.
because it shows extra initiative. It shows that they're kind of with the times, that they're putting in extra effort to network and get themselves out there. So,
Right.
and it's not one of those platforms you have to be on all the time. Like, you don't
No.
have to post, you just have to be searchable. And when someone lands on a profile, they got to be able to find the information they're looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
And another thing I like to add is to LinkedIn is where you find your recruiters, your hiring managers, your CEOs, the founders, like everybody. And I think LinkedIn is a new resume. Like literally persons can look on your profile and see what you're about and, as what you say, land you a job. Thank you so much for that. I'm not seeing any more questions as yet, but wonderful information. I know we touched on skills, but I know as nurses, you even mentioned nurses, like for a nurse who has 30 years of experience. How does she put all of those, or he or she puts all of those skills on their resume with 30 years of experience?
Yeah, that's the tricky part, right? So you really
Mhm.
have to think, right? You have to brainstorm about, how do I condense 30 years of experience onto two pieces of paper? Because it doesn't really speak to 30 years of experience.
Mhm.
You just have to try your best, right? So think about, what are some skills that you have developed really well over time. As a nurse that's been working 30 years, I'm sure you've been through everything, right? You've been through staff shortages, you've been through being floated to different units, you've precepted. I'm sure, there are so many things, right? So I think the first thing is to think about, what are some skills that are not that obvious that I can do? And it might start by asking your coworkers or asking your family and friends, like, when you think of me as a nurse, what are the top skills that you see as my strengths? You can also think about, like, what have I really done in the last 5 to 10 years that shows progression in my career? Like, maybe you took a course or a workshop, or you attended a conference, or maybe you even presented something. So these are all things that we kind of think, oh, well, they're just part of the job, or I didn't keep that certification. So it's really important to kind of keep an accurate record, right? Just like we document so well for our patients, it's like we got to document our careers and figure out, how can I showcase all the great work I've done? How can I stand out to someone who doesn't know me as a person? And this is a really great way to do it. Also, I know this is probably very minor, but don't be afraid to bold things or underline them if you think they're really important, just to
Mhm.
visually make them stand out. Something that you've done that you think is really, really more important than anything else that you've done. That's a way that you can stand out as well.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I want to backtrack a bit on what you mentioned that when you apply, like, say, for to a facility or an organization, you can take the extra mile or step to reach out to that hiring manager who is on LinkedIn and say, "Hey, I just applied."
Hmm.
Um, what do you put together in that first DM or message that you're gonna say? For persons like me, I'll be like, "Oh my God, I'm scared. How do I approach this person? Will they answer me? Will this seem too pushy or she's too much?"
Yeah. So I would say, think about it from the recruiter's point of view, right? So they are so busy. They are getting hundreds of applications for
Mhm.
every job they put up. So sometimes they're overwhelmed. They're burnt out too. So if
Mhm.
anything you can do to make it easier for them, that's why you always want to apply first online. Always, always,
Mhm.
always. Then you follow up with a message, and you can keep it short and sweet, right? We don't want to be writing like a whole cover letter to someone. So just something like, uh, hey, Sarah, I applied for, and then list the job, because remember, they're not just recruiting for one job, they're recruiting for a lot. I just
Mhm.
applied for the remote RN position. Here are my top 3 skills. And you could even, summarize what's in your summary section.
Mhm.
I am well versed in Epic and Meditech EMR. I've been a nurse for 7 years. I am very tech savvy. Okay, just something like that. Then you might even want to attach your resume to the message. So you
Mm.
can do that too, right? So just keep it short and sweet. And then maybe like one follow up message to say, hope you got my resume. Let me know if you have any questions. So we don't want to bombard people either. But just this is a way you can stand out, because maybe if they get that message and they think, hey, where is she or he in this list of 100 applications I just got? And they might go back to find you because you made the extra effort, right?
Mm.
Sometimes it's just making their job easier so that they can do what they need to do, because at the end of the day, they want to hire someone as much as you want to be hired, because it's good for them as well, right? It's part of
Mm.
their job. So doing that will make a big difference. How to find that person, that's something I can go over, and maybe another call, or
Yeah.
like if you wanted some one-on-one help, I can show you exactly how to find these people
Mhm.
and how I did it myself. Because one of the jobs that I got right before the pandemic, it turned remote during the pandemic. And what I did
Mm.
was I just started randomly asking to connect with people on LinkedIn that worked at that company and asking them, would you be willing to chat with me about this job? And a lot of people didn't answer. One person flat out told me, no, I can't help you. But one person did want to help me, and she had had the job previous to me, and she actually talked to me for an hour and answered every question I want to know. So to me, it's worth it to put in
Yeah.
that effort. Even if you get some rejections, that's okay. All you need is one person, right? And even with applying for jobs, all you need is one offer, really. Even if you've applied for so many jobs, really all you need is one offer. And that is the whole point of doing all this.
Yes, thank you so much. One on we always see on LinkedIn talking about nurses just need to start, that you can branch into any job. A lot of nurses, including myself, would say that we need to go back to school, go get that master's degree before you can get a good paying job or even branch off into remote nursing or anything specifically. It was like pivoting. What
Mhm.
is your take on that?
So I definitely think school has its time and place. I have a master's in nursing. I don't regret getting it. What I would say though is think about your reason for wanting a new job. Are you feeling burnt out? Are you looking for a change of pace? Are you looking to learn something new? You don't necessarily have to go back to school, but if you truly want to go back to school for the love of learning and that sort of thing, that is fine. What I would say is, as a first step, instead of thinking about a very expensive and time consuming degree, you might want to put that same energy into your job search. Like, really, really have a top notch resume, top notch LinkedIn profile, network with anybody you know who could possibly help you. That is going to make a world of difference into whether you get a job offer or not. I've talked to tons of nurses who have gotten a master's in health informatics, who have gotten a master's in public health, who have, they've done a certification in occupational health, and years later, they still can't find the job they're looking for. And they're
Wow.
coming to me for help. So it's part of it, right? Like, it's definitely, I'm not saying go back to school, but I'm saying there is definitely a lot of things that you need to do, right, to get the job you want. If you have all the degrees in the world, but you're not putting together an effective resume that can tell someone really quickly that you're the right person for the job, it's not going to go very far.
Yes.
So just think about it. And I know, part of the mentality of nursing is like school first, certification first. If I do this, right, it's going to get me the job. So like, I think there's no guarantees, and you kind of have to you have to attack it on all fronts,
Right.
right? Yeah.
All right. So one of your big, so what you basically saying is, doing your proper research, and one of your biggest advantage would be to networking.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Another question that I have, and this would be termed in terms of jobs. Should nurses tailor their resumes to the different jobs that they're applying for? Persons like myself sometimes, and other persons may just say, "Oh, I'm an RN. This is all that I have. These are the skills. You need a registered nurse. I'm just going to send you this one resume template that I have." Should you change your all the different jobs that you're applying for to fit change your resumes to fit all the different jobs you're applying for?
So short answer is I would say yes. Tailoring is really important. Do you need to tailor to every single job? I think it helps, right? Definitely it helps, because it's impossible to have one master resume that you use for every single job you apply to, unless you're only applying to one type of job. Then that could work. But what might be more helpful is trying to narrow down maybe 2 or 3 different job titles that you're going for and have 2 or 3 different resume versions for those jobs. That probably would be a better use of time, because what I used to do, and I know a lot of other nurses do, is just start applying for anything and everything you might be remotely qualified for, and you're tailoring your resume every time, but there's no commonality between any of these jobs. So if you can kind of be a little bit more clear about what it is you want, then it is a lot more helpful in terms of looking for job postings, but also applying.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I think maybe when I graduated 20 years ago, I did have one resume version, but I also didn't have very much to talk about, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a career before nursing, really, so there was nothing really to tailor. But I would say now it's probably more important than ever, because there are a lot of nurses who are looking to leave bedside, they're looking to work remote, so these jobs have become that much more competitive. And so it really does pay to have
Mm-hmm.
quality over quantity. So I would much rather you spend time applying to 10 jobs and really focus and tailor your resume than apply to 100 jobs with the same resume and then not hear back from any of them.
Okay, good. So if
Yeah.
you're just joining us, remember we're on live on YouTube and TikTok, and we're here with Nurse Sarah, the RN resume, giving us tips and expert advice on how to structure your resume and land your dream job. So come over onto YouTube if you want to see Nurse Sarah. I think Nurse Sarah, you may have to do a TikTok live because a lot of people I think are intrigued.
Okay, I'm on TikTok. I'm on TikTok, just not as much as LinkedIn. So,
Oh,
this is a challenge for anyone watching. Try to see if you can find me on TikTok, because I do exist on there.
all
I'm not as active. I'm not a TikTok
right.
whatever. There's no top voice, but whatever the equivalent of that is on TikTok.
Yes. All right. So I know with so many persons on, you have a lot of persons right now, especially for the US. When you look online and you see apply to a job, you see 100 persons applying. We're now living in the AI age, and we have what we call applicant tracking system, like machine generated system that running through screening or resumes. Does this affect how your resume gets selected? Does it play a part whether you're selected or not?
Yeah, so I'll just start by saying that ATS, or applicant tracking, has existed for years and years and years. So this is not new.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can kind of explain what applicant tracking system is, it's software that basically scans your resume or your cover letter or both and compares it to how closely you match the job posting. That's why I've been saying over and over in this live that you have to tailor it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Use the terms, use the keywords that you see in the job posting, because what it does is assigns you a rank on how closely you match the job posting. So it's not that ATS will reject you or accept you, it will put you in a list of all the other people that have applied. So whether you end up at the top, middle, or bottom of the list is how the applicant tracking system kind of pre-filters you for the person that's actually going to look at the resume. And so now with AI, right, a lot of companies now have to state in the job posting if they're using AI to review applications. So that is something that more and more people are doing. But on the other side, I know a lot of people are using AI to create their resumes.
Yes.
And what happens with that is you get very kind of generic sounding resumes where everyone, like, down to the words, the phrases, the sentences they use, it kind of comes out all the same now. So I think if you're using AI, it's really important to put your own voice into it. Like, write your version first, and maybe if you need help, then you can use AI to kind of refine or edit it a little bit.
Mm.
Yeah. So I guess just going back to what you're saying, ATS has always been around. Now there's this extra layer of AI filtering. But the truth is, if you have an effective resume and you interview well, that won't matter, right? It's just that sometimes people get discouraged because they can see so many people apply to a job. But I've talked to recruiters, and half the people that apply are not in any way qualified, or some of them aren't even living in the country where the job's posted. So they're automatically not even being considered. So
Mm.
I would just not focus too much on how many people have applied. Again, focus on quality over quantity, and at the end of the day, you only need one job offer.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. Now, one of the last questions that I have, and if you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to ask, is since your time being a registered nurse who is assisting nurses with the resume writing, what has been some of the biggest mistakes that you see nurses make when it comes on to resumes?
I see a lot of nurses kind of downplaying the skills that they have.
Mm,
One of the clients that I worked with recently, every single job she had 5 registered nurse jobs, right? Literally, there was one bullet point that said, um, worked with patients according to care plan as per physician. And I thought, what? I'm like, what's going on here? She said, I'm not good at writing resumes. And I said, okay, but like you can tell me verbally what you did, right? And
mm-hmm,
based on what she told me, I thought, I don't know what you were doing there, but that is definitely, you did 10 times more than you wrote on your resume. So, number one, I think is downplaying our accomplishments, making our responsibilities seem generic.
mm,
The second thing is, like I mentioned, including way too much information that's not relevant to the job. So sometimes you just got to cut that stuff out, as painful as it is. Sometimes there are things that you're really proud of doing that don't really move the needle on whether you get a job or not, right? So let's say you're going for a remote nursing job.
mm-hmm,
And as great as it is that you got this ultrasound guided IV certification, if that's not what they're asking for, it's not really going to showcase anything, right? It's not going to move the needle forward. So you have to be okay with letting certain things go. And that's why LinkedIn is perfect, because if there's something you had to take off your resume, you can definitely include it on your LinkedIn profile and even include a hyperlink to your LinkedIn profile on your resume.
mm,
So I would say just, having things that don't belong in there that aren't relevant to the job, the resume being too long, also not being able to think outside the box in terms of what your transferable skills are and how you can use those to pivot into another job. So being really, really mindful of things you've done that are outside of the box. So I'll just give you an example. So when I wanted to be a nurse educator for a home and community care agency. I had never worked home and community care. I'd been in the hospital my whole career. But when I was in nursing school, I worked as an HCA. We call them here PSWs, but basically a home healthcare aide.
yeah.
And I worked in the community. So I talked about that a lot during my interview, but I also highlighted that on my resume, even though it was so many years ago. That would be an example of, when it's okay to include information from way back. Because I talked about that so much. That was how I pivoted into home and community care after over 10 years and never having worked in that area as a nurse. So,
Mm-hmm,
like, even just thinking about, like, if you're currently working somewhere, are there committees you can join that would give you exposure to um, IT or leadership, right? Project management. These are all things you can learn if you take the extra step. And I know it's hard, right? Like, a lot of people are burnt out. So do what you can, right? Do
mm-hmm,
what you can, even if it means taking an online course to give you basic foundation in something. There are a lot of courses that are either free or very low cost that won't cost you an arm and a leg. And that is a way you can upskill and take the initiative to pivot into something else.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you so
Mhm.
much. Definitely enjoy this session. I wonder if we need a part two. I think this is an area, as what you said earlier when we came on, that none of us were taught about resume writing in nursing school, and I think we definitely do struggle with it, especially moving on to transferable skills. I hope that from this, a lot of persons who tune in got some insight. However, I know you offer this service. Where can
Mhm.
we find you if nurses are in need of your service? And also, who do you work with and what specific countries?
Okay, yeah. So the easiest way is to go to my website, which is thernresume.com. So all one word.
Mm-hmm,
You can also visit my website, which is my first and last name. So sarahfung.com, Sarah with no H. The if you're on social media, look me up on LinkedIn. You can find
mm-hmm,
me on Instagram. I'm on YouTube a little bit and I'm on TikTok a little bit.
mm-hmm.
So definitely send me a message, or you can email me. It's Sarah, SARA, at thernresume.com. And in terms of who I work with all nurses. So whether you're an LPN, RN, NP, you name it, you can be anywhere from a new grad all the way to 40 plus years experience. If you are looking for a change, you've been applying and you're not getting any responses, that's who I help. Um, I'm not, it doesn't matter to me as long as you are in Canada or the US. Those are typically the nurses that I work with, the
Okay.
countries that I work with.
Okay, quick question. What about if you have nurses want to transition over to the US or to Canada? You'll also work with them
Uh,
on.
yeah. So I will say I'm not an immigration expert. So if you've
Mhm,
got your immigration stuff figured out, I can help with the rest. If you
mhm,
need a resume, maybe there's a way that we can make you more marketable to either the US or Canada if you're coming from a different country. Like I think healthcare is healthcare. It's just
mhm.
all this red tape that sometimes gets in the way of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you repeat that? Let me just put this in the chat for your email address. It's sarah@theresume.com.
Sarah at thernresume.com.
All right. So we're on YouTube Live also, and I place those in the chat. If you want those information, you can watch us come over on YouTube for that. And we're thankful for Nurse Sarah for being here today. Actually, really, really enjoyed this conversation and loved it. Let us know if you should come back for a part two, guys. Type in the chat, part two. Let's see. You can find Nurse Sarah, as she stated earlier. She's on TikTok, on Instagram, and also on LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, get one now. I do follow her on LinkedIn too, and I see so many wonderful things that she posts online in terms of advice and information. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'd love to come back for part two.
All right. Any last words that you have for a registered nurse who is looking to pivot, struggling with a resume right now? What are your last words for them?
Okay, we all started from somewhere, right? We all started at the bottom. I did too. And the only way to go is just to put the effort in and keep positive and keep motivated. So I know right now is a difficult time for a lot of us. So stay positive, surround yourself with positive people, have faith. Good things are coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being here. And we'll see you in another video. Thank you, Nurse Sarah. And RNT to CEO says, yes, I think a lot of MPs could use her services. Yes. We'll see you guys in another video. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.